Going to start in Austria, which has introduced a partial lockdown for the 2 million people who haven't had 2 doses of a coronavirus vaccine. They've been told to stay at home except for work and essential shopping. Now, the country has one of the highest infection rates in Europe, but new restrictions are being brought in or considered across much of the continent. Courtney Bembridge has more.
There was a last-minute rush at vaccination centres in Upper Austria on the eve of new restrictions for those who are not yet protected. Unvaccinated Austrians were already barred from visiting restaurants, hairdressers and cinemas, but they're now being told to stay at home except for work and food shopping. It'll be policed using spot checks with hefty fines for those caught breaking the rules. Austria has one of the lowest vaccination rates in Western Europe. Around 64% of the population is fully vaccinated, which leaves 2 million people yet to get 2 doses. And the country has one of the highest infection rates in Europe, more than 800 cases per 100,000 people.
The ICUs are starting to fill up. It's already projected that within 2 weeks we will have reached the limit, and we know that the cases we see now will be those that fill up the ICUs in 2 weeks. So there's need for some measure right now.
But not everyone agrees. Crowds gathered over the weekend in Salzburg and Vienna to make their opposition clear.
I'm here today because I want to fight for my rights. These measures are absolutely discriminatory. My body, our bodies, we have the right to decide about them.
A fourth wave of infections is gripping much of Europe, and the continent is once again the epicentre of the virus. Eastern European nations with lower vaccination rates like Latvia and Russia were among the first to bring back restrictions. But even the Netherlands, with a vaccination rate above 80%, has reintroduced a partial lockdown for at least 3 weeks. And Germany is also weighing up new restrictions. Courtney Bembridge, BBC News.
Well, let's go to Vienna now. Our correspondent Bethany Bell is there. Hi, Bethany. So just tell us how these new measures are being received. We saw protests out there, people out on the streets, but generally more widely, is this accepted that given what's happening in the hospitals there, this has to happen?
It really depends on who you speak to. As we heard in that report, around 65% of Austrians are fully vaccinated, and many of them are very keen to avoid another lockdown of the type that we saw earlier this year or last year. And some of them are very much in favour of these measures, a lockdown for the unvaccinated rather than the lockdown for the vaccinated. But then there are those who say this is questionable as to whether this is constitutional. There are those who, like those protesters we heard, say that this is a matter for them to decide personally, and that there are those who say that this is actually quite a divisive step to have taken, that it will not necessarily do what the government's hoping it will do to encourage more people to get vaccinated, rather it will do the opposite. So, and then there are also doctors saying actually this partial lockdown may not be enough to crucially bring down those very high infection rates, and that actually more stricter measures will be needed.
Well, moving on to that, then what exactly is the government saying about what could potentially happen next?
Well, the health minister yesterday said other stricter measures are potentially on the table, other types of tightening measures possible. So nobody is ruling out steps at the moment. What the government is very, very keen to do is to try to avoid another lockdown. On the other hand, they have to look at the situation in the hospitals. They also have to consider that if Austria's numbers continue to soar, what will that mean for their winter tourist season, which is a very big matter for its economy. So there are a lot of things to be weighed at the moment, and it's a complicated decision.
Yeah, as always. Thanks, Bethany.